All right, so it looks like real estate prices are going through the roof in the suburbs of Denver. Just got off the horn with a client who's a realtor out that way. I think a broker actually. And she was telling me that it's hell's bells out there. But it's funny, people from not just California moving, from Chicago and New York moving too. And she was sharing with me this, idea that she was listening to a guy who's been in the mortgage industry, who does brokerage lending or mortgage lending for like 30, 35 years, something like that. She was sharing with me this idea that what this guy was saying is we had such a repression of demand and just basically supply and demand for spring, because spring is always a busy time. People want to be moved in by the time school starts. That when they let off the tea kettle steam, it kind of exploded, and so people are rushed down like crazy. The interest rate's low. I would say you factor in the BLM stuff too. That's made people a lot more nervous. But it's interesting because I said, well, okay, I get that, but they're moving from New York and Chicago. But my question is, who's buying those houses in New York and Chicago? I mean, if they're selling a house, aren't people buying it? Because a lot of people just have so much equity in their homes that they're tapping into it. And that's why she says it's not a real estate bubble. Because so much equity in their homes, it's not ninja loans where there's no equity, no one put money down. There's tons and tons of equity. So I guess that's probably true. But I still think, but if you're living in Denver, Colorado, the suburbs, whatever they are, like Greenwood, someplace out there, Greenwood or something like that, I can't remember. But anyway, if you're living in Denver, Colorado suburbs, right? Well, you got to have, it would seem to me, that you can't inherently occupy a place in New York City at the same time, or New York State. So don't you have to sell ultimately at some point to buy that place? I don't get it. So if you're buying a house in Denver, you're leaving a house in New York, you have to have a seller for that, have a buyer for the house in New York. So I don't get how that's working. So it doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, it's always two sides of every trade. And I mean, I get if there's a bunch of renters out there. That's a nice thing about renting. You can just up and go when you need. But I mean, a lot of these people aren't renters because inherently why I have equity in the house. So I don't get it. I don't get why I get the demand side. People want to get to a beautiful place like Colorado. I get that. But I don't get the sales side when it comes to selling their house in New York. I don't get that. Who's buying these houses? And where's the cash going to buy the house? Coming from to buy the house. I'm confused by that. But it's pretty interesting anyway. So again, she's thinking what's going to happen is, according to this mortgage broker, regardless of the election, come the wintertime, it's going to soften a little bit. And then come the spring, it's going to reboom. I think that's probably true. I think it's going to boom like crazy come the spring. And the reason for that, I think, is because we've had such a demand just been curtailed by outside forces because of commie virus, that you're going to have people saying once the commie virus is behind us again, after we have this, quote, second wave, which is sure to come. And I say sure to come, I say it facetiously, because it's going to come in name only. That people are going to say, all right, now it's time for me to, diddy mow from where I'm at now and go to a safer climb. At least a smart money, I think, would be like that. They say, let me get out of here. I'm going to move to a nicer climb. Maybe it's settled enough where there'll be someone who still wants to buy those places in New York City. I don't know. That's my only thing, is how does the sales side work for the places where people want to flee? Are they going to take, bottom dollar? I don't know. But it's interesting nonetheless. When you suppress economic activity, you can only suppress it long enough where it just explodes, and that's going to explode, I would think, in the spring. So I think there'll be a huge flurry of activity in the spring. I'd just be interesting to see what it's going to be for the prices on homes in the urban areas that are being with the lefty government. I don't know. It'll be interesting to find out, though, so I have to keep our eyes apprised on that for sure. I could easily see demand surging for suburban properties, though, easily, regardless of interest rates and regardless of who wins the election. Don't forget, man, if we're still at 3 1/4, 3 1/8, 3 1/2, that's still freaking low, dude, without question. And then you factor in all the equity that's been built up. I mean, people are sitting pretty from a household financial perspective. It's a good place to be. We'll see.